Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm very happy to have in the studio with me today Jason Shiers. Jason is a certified transformative coach and psychotherapist who has been working with evolving addiction treatments from food to substance dependence for over 2 decades, both in residential and personal settings. Jason is also the host of his brand new podcast, Misunderstandings of the Mind. Welcome, Jason, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Del. Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, thank you. I know you came all the way from the UK.
I did, especially for this.
Yeah, exactly. I pestered you. I said, please come in person.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you're here today. So you've had, you grew up pretty close to where I grew up. I grew up in North Wales. You're from Manchester, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in Lancashire, so maybe less than a couple of hours away for sure. Yeah,
northern boy.
Yeah.
So anyway, you had a really interesting upbringing and the early part of your youth, and you just share as much as you want to share with me.
Yeah. I don't know if it was my first memory, but it's like the first memory that's prominent or very vivid for me was the death of my father, and I was about 5, and I remember the police showing up at the door, and it was like I have this vision, that was etched in my mind, for years of we had this the back door of the house, and it's like I could see one police officer with a helmet under his arm and a police lady with one of them old I don't know if they still have them, and he had a blue shirt on, so it was 1977, and and me just being completely oblivious to that. But then my mum lying on the floor, kicking and screaming the floor and stuff, and then being led away to the neighbours, just completely oblivious to what was going on, and not really having any clue on what it was about. And I started writing a book, and I was writing recently that, as a child, I didn't know what death was. I didn't have any understanding of it, and no one helped me make sense of that. It was just didn't know. It was kind of like I didn't have any view of the world or any perspective on life or any thinking about what it meant. It was just an emotional experience, I guess.
Well, even if you didn't know what it meant, just witnessing your mother being that distraught must have been traumatic in itself, even if you couldn't conceptualize what it meant that your father wasn't coming home or so how did you I know that I've listened to some of your interviews before, so how did you cope with some of those feelings that were coming up?
Well, food certainly became my friend. Probably about 10 years ago, I asked my mum to send me all the pictures that she had of me as a kid, and this was on my psychological delving into the past, and where things were getting progressively worse. But I looked, and it was almost like the pictures of me became less and less as over the years, and that was because my behaviour got worse and my eating got worse, and I certainly gained weight about a stone every year from the age of 5 to 16, to the point where I was 16 stone at 16. I was always massively overweight, and I didn't know it then at the time, but it was just like there was a sense of comfort, and a sense of warmth, a sense of escape, from life in food. And it was like I used to get excited at the thought of knowing when my mum was going shopping, and thinking that she would come home with certain things that I could get away with eating. And there were always arguments about who'd stolen the food, and things like that, and it was like, I just didn't care. I just wanted to feel better, It was like, I didn't know that, but it was like, that was just the motivation and the drive, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, well, I can certainly relate to that. I'm actually, as you just shared that, I'm thinking, I think one of my very first experiences, when I went to school, I think my mum gave me threepence or something. I don't think you had threepences when you were little, but to buy some sweets in the sweet shop. And I remember watching other people go up and buy, a couple of sweets. And I went up and I gave my money over, and I think I ordered half the shop. And they just laughed at me, and I was so embarrassed. But it was, sweets were comfort as a child, certainly for me.
Yeah.
So sweets and crisps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then what happened after the sweets and crisps? Anything else?
Yeah. I mean, that went on, and certainly, as I got older, I became more aware of myself, more aware of my thinking, more aware of my feeling, about life, feeling isolated, distant, as different, thinking I didn't really fit in, struggling, especially with my weight, being overweight and being different at school, and and that just went on, to like a messy. I stole a lot of money, committed a lot of crime, at a very early age. I would steal anything that wasn't pinned down because it was just an escapism.
Yeah.
It was kind of, my mum I was a lost cause to her. I remember she sent me to the psychiatric services. I was about 9 years old, and actually 10 years ago, again, when I was digging into this stuff, I contacted the medical records people in the UK, which you can do and get all your medical records. So I ordered this book that came, like this.
Wow.
It cost me a lot of money, and all I really wanted was the childhood stuff to look at it, and I got not many records, but I read through these psychiatric reports that were given to me in the 80s, and they said that there was no mention of grief. There was no mention of social connection, there was no mention of how my dad's death was dealt with or anything like that. It was like they said that I showed signs of being slow.
Yeah, and you became a psychotherapist, so clearly they were wrong there.
Yeah. I showed signs of being slow. They put me on antidepressants at 9.
Oh, wow.
It even said the makes and types of medication and the dosages that they gave me, at that time. And but I mean, that was it. I was just in and out of like psychiatric services from a very early age, committing crime, but stealing money from home. My mum didn't know what to do with me.
Were you an only child?
No, I had a younger brother, but he was just very different. I was just kind of like, it just we didn't experience the same thing. And until I found drugs, I guess, as an early teenager, like just literally like 12, 13 years old, I found drugs at that age. And crime, I mean, as soon as I took drugs, I was like, I remember a guy saying to me the very first time I took drugs, "Look at you, you're addicted already."
Wow.
I remember that. That's one of the vivid memories that I have as a child, and it was like, and I was just like, "You're crazy, what's wrong with you?" It's kind of like, but he saw it, whatever he saw in me, he
and
he
how
saw
old
it.
were you then?
13.
Yeah.
And that was heroin, taking heroin.
Wow.
And the crime, that I'd already been doing a lot of crime, so it just was easy to commit crime to make money to buy drugs. It was just kind of like how things progressed. Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, that's just a portion of your previous life, because I know that you got sober and did some amazing things. 25 years ago?
23
years ago. Yeah. So that was short-lived, relatively. 10 years, but still.
10 years of mess, of institutions, of jails, of alienation from society, of homelessness,
so
of
what
chaos.
turned it around? Because I know that you turned your life around incredibly.
Yeah. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I've heard that saying, and it's like, it was so true for me. And I'd love to say that I had a moment of insight and all of a sudden everything was okay, but it was like, I was just really sick of going to jail. And I always felt that I wasn't living my own life, that it was kind of like, I went through momentary, like, thinking it's a phase and one day I'm going to wake up and it's going to change, and then realising that it wasn't, and thinking I was going to be on, prescriptions, medication and so on forever because I just couldn't stop taking drugs, and lived in homeless shelters. I mean, it was desperation. I was frightened, every time I went to jail, it was just kind of like, I was looking around thinking, what am I doing here, with all these people?
So how did you get it? So did you find help when you were in jail? I know that you mentioned the 12-step program helped you first get sober.
Yeah, no, there was very few meetings around at the time in the early 90s, 12-step recovery. and I've been involved in the evolution of that, I guess, like to where there's meetings every day, like at that point. But I found rehabilitation. I was sent to rehabilitation, and just shortly after my last jail sentence, and it just went from there. Really, I was frightened and I didn't want to take drugs. It's kind of like I knew that, so like it gave me the first ever glimpse of like seeing that there was something more on offer, through life at that time. But I really didn't want to do the 12-step work. Because I was frightened. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a clue about life or growing up emotionally. So it was like, I attended. I did I picked the parts out of the 12-step program that I wanted. I liked the people. I liked the meetings. I didn't like the work. Didn't like talking about myself. Didn't want to do anything really too deep, and I certainly didn't want to be vulnerable and tell anyone who I was.
Wow. So what changed? Because now that's what you do.
Yeah.
So
I suffered, through my own lack of willingness to see who I was, my own fear of who I might be. It's kind of like I stopped taking drugs, but I indulged in so many other addictions with food again. After I took drugs, food became the problem straight away. I just wanted to fill the emptiness inside of me, and then it was relationships and money and shiny objects, and and then going back in and out of relationships, back to food, back to relationships, obsessed with the gym. It was like an endless cycle of different addictions, one after another. So like, just to the point again of it being so painful, it was just kind of like, I was just used to think, am I doing this wrong? Am I missing something? Is there something in this program that I haven't seen that after 20 years of doing it, and still acting in a way that wasn't really productive or bringing me any real joy in life.
And this was also after you'd graduated from, what was the program again you graduated from? There's a certain type of psychotherapy you were trained in?
Transactional analysis. So I mean, that was, after 10, 15 years of recovery where things weren't really getting that much better, even though I'd stopped taking drugs, and externally life got better. I mean, I got a job, I got a career, but internally my view of the world, I guess, was going downhill. And my disillusioned, very disillusioned with what life was about. So I thought, I'd gone to therapy. I spent 10 years in therapy, and it's kind of like, I thought, a lot of my friends had become counsellors because, that's kind of what they wanted to do. And I thought, I'll find the most difficult, most complicated type of psychological therapy I could. And transactional analysis sounded like a long, complicated name.
Exactly.
So I did that. I spent 5 years training in that, and that was when I dug up the medical reports and the pictures and things like that. And I mean, I struggled before that, but I would say my life got progressively worse through that 5 years of training, and it was all like, oh, it's meant to happen, it's like you've got to desensitize yourself to the past, and you've got to talk about the past in order to get better from it, and I can remember going to those groups and lying on the floor like a gibbering wreck, just crying and just being in a real dark place, and just thinking, is this what I've got to do, to get better?
I know, I've beaten a few pillows in my life in therapy, and I always say that it definitely helped me function probably a little better than I would have done if I hadn't have had the therapy I had. I had an excellent therapist, but it was really when I came across the principles that just my life just changed dramatically.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about that? When did you first come across them, and how did you come across them, I should say?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. I went through the depression when I'd done my training, and then I got overly anxious when I used to fly, go in small spaces. So that it somehow got a little bit better, after the few years after qualifying as a therapist, but I was still on a searching journey, and I'd done the Hoffman process, I'd done all sorts of silent retreats, meditations, different, I just kept searching, and I ended up at Tony Robbins. So it's kind of I'd done a couple of Tony Robbins events where I thought that I'd already become like thinking this definitely isn't the answer. You know, it's kind of like whatever it is, it's not. This is not for me. You know, jumping on a trampoline, getting in
walking
a plunge
on
pool,
coals
getting in state. You know, before you do every day, and you know, and I'd already sort of thought, yep. Next. And I watched someone. I was on a WhatsApp group and someone gave me a login for Hay House Radio, and Michael Neal had done a video series and they call The Path of Effortless Change, and I remember, just because of my IT skills, because I'd built a business in IT, I was the designated person to, what would you call it, hijack the screenshots of the video so I could share it with everyone, so everyone in this WhatsApp group could get access to see these videos. So I was working away, I had this laptop at the side of me, and I was screen recording the video of Michael Neal, and I kept like looking at it for ages, and I was thinking, this guy really talks some sense. I don't know what it is, there's something about what he's saying that really sits with me. And I remember saying to my friend, saying, I really like this guy, you know, I don't know what it is, but there's something about what he's saying. So even then, you know, when I wasn't aware of it, there was something that was really resonating with me, you know, just really.
Well, as they say, it's, you know, look for the feeling, not the intellect. So obviously you were getting the feeling from what Michael was sharing. Yeah. So.
And I think then it was like maybe even a year later, you know, where I'd sort of I was going to LA to a Rich Litvin event, and I saw that Michael Neal was running an intensive at the same time, and it was literally one of those, like, now I look back at it, I thought it was really bizarre the way it all unfolded, you know, and it's kind of like not being in the driving seat myself, it's kind of like, it just looked like it was meant to be. And so the Michael event started 2 days after the event that I was here. I thought, I'm in LA, I don't have to buy another ticket, you know, it makes sense to go. And I remember Michael saying to me, you know, like, can you just like forget any ideas about what this should be like, about how you think it should run, about what you think you should get out of it, you know, because I'd spent so long in that on that psychological journey as a therapist. Like, it was always like, right, it needs to be so many hours, and I need to get my money's worth, and I need to be able to make sense of it. And you know, I was really looking to agree or to disagree with what was being said there. So I was so glad that like he put it that way, because I thought, okay, you know, it's kind of like, I'll give that a go, you know, like not thinking.
And were you able to?
Yeah, I really like, I was a bit like, because the time that we were there was quite short, you know, like it was a day, but it was kind of like, it's a long dinner break and stuff like that. And I was a little bit in my head about like, I'm not getting my money's worth here, you know, it's kind of like, but something really happened, you know, at that point. It was kind of like, I went there like feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've got to do this, I've got to achieve that, I need to get this in my life, I need to find a way to make, you know, it's kind of, I don't know if it was really there that I want to, I mean, I wanted to feel better, but it wasn't the reason I went. I was looking for something to give me inspiration so I could achieve more, you know.
More of the outside in.
Yeah, definitely. They're big on. Because that's what I thought was the answer. I'd been searching, and I always thought that like something outside of myself, more money, better relationship, different things, was what was going to make me feel better. And I remember that like those 3 days we spent, and I don't have a clue what was said, you know. And it's like, and I don't know what happened, but I remember it was I think it was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I remember at the end of it, you know, on the Thursday, he said to read 3 chapters of the Inside Out Revolution, you know, before I got there, and I didn't. I read them in the evenings while we were there. Yeah. And I remember on the Thursday evening, you know, after it had finished, you know, I didn't really have any thoughts about whether it was good or bad, but I sat on this swing at the back of this Airbnb in Woodland Hills where I'd been, and I was looking out over this valley, and I just thought, wow, you know, isn't life amazing, you know? And it was like I just had this realization of just thinking nothing seems like a problem anymore, you know? And it was like, it was just such a nice feeling, such a nice experience, and I just really thought, it's like everything's changed, but nothing's changed.
Exactly.
You know, I couldn't, like, nothing outside of myself had changed, no circumstances. I hadn't got more money. I hadn't got a new relationship. You know, there was nothing there, but it was like everything felt really different. You know, it was like nothing seemed problematic. I felt like right there in that moment, you know, that experience of being in the now, I guess.
So that's beautiful. So that was the beginning then of your journey into being a 3 Principles coach and practitioner.
Yeah.
And you have a new podcast coming out.
Yeah, I do.
So, what was the inspiration for that?
The name came up to me, Misunderstandings of the Mind, and I thought there's only really one misunderstanding, of how we create our reality, and how thought, in the moment creates the way we feel. That was my big misunderstanding. I thought, but everyone thinks they've got a unique problem, like I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got guilt, shame, trauma, all these things, and across businesses, there's misunderstandings of leadership, of management, of all different things. And that's kind of, I thought, wouldn't it be really good if we could, just meet people where they're at, and talk about what look like to them individual misunderstandings, but we're all pointing back to the same truth, the same thing. So it was just really, that was my inspiration. I loved the name. I thought it was really simple and powerful, and I thought it kind of meets people where they're at and helps talk about this understanding into the wider world. Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful. I definitely, I jokingly, I call this Insightful Conversations. It was going to be called either that or Warts and All, because I just think what I love about this understanding is that it's not a spiritual bypass, and it's not that that you're striving for anything, to become less human. I mean, it's really about just embracing the totality of who we are at our essence, our spiritual essence, and who we are as humans too. Yeah. And just accepting, self-acceptance. What would you say is the biggest thing that it's had the impact on what area in your life, or all areas?
Yeah. It was really hard to pick one thing when I've been asked that question, because it's like everything's changed, but to put it simply, better relationships and connection, better parent, better friendships, my feeling about life, because all those things are about how you feel about life, right? It's kind of so my feelings about where I'm going, it's kind of I don't feel this urgency to be anywhere, or to do anything, or to achieve something, or, I'm not fearful about being seen, being visual and just being me, and it's kind of I just feel I feel excited about life. Wow. That's probably the biggest. All those things together seem like, the creation of being more excited, making life a more exciting adventure. Because it certainly wasn't exciting before. It was kind of gloomy.
Well, and scary it sounds. I mean, what you shared earlier. I mean, always being in that sort of that angst you had as a young man, of comparing yourself to others, feeling less than, feeling that you didn't fit in. Yeah. I mean, this is what I love about this understanding, is it's a great equalizer. We all realize that we're all equal to each other on the spiritual plane. I mean, we all come out a little different on the outside when we're in the form, but certainly, we're all at that level, at our essence, we're all equal.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful experiences I have being around this people in this understanding, is that I feel kind of no better, no worse, exactly. Accepted. I don't have to show up in any particular way to be okay, it's and I love that. I love being around that. It feels really natural. It feels really, I feel a nice connection, with people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know when I think about when I grew up, it was either better than or less than, but it was never equal to. I don't think I could ever say that I experienced that feeling equal to, which, I definitely do now. Yeah. So for anybody listening, we've got, share a little bit about what you offer. I know you have some wonderful programs you offer.
Yeah, I have my coaching, wideworldcoaching.com, where I work with people in all sorts of ways. I've got a love of working with people with addictions, because it's something that I suffered with, for so long, and my own seeing of the principles of what was truth, what was true for me, and has really changed the way I work with people. So I love doing that, and I like meeting people where they're at. So it's I tend to like working with people that want to lose weight, and it always comes as an external feeling about how they look, but it's kind of like, it's great getting to, like because my own journey, I mean, I was 350 pounds, it's kind of like, and then went through that process of change, but realized that the internal process, the outside just changed itself. So I love working with people that are struggling with that, but I mean, I've worked with so many different people. I work with couples, I've coached couples in relationships. I've just got different things, it's kind of like different areas that I love doing,
I know, that's the beauty about this coaching. Sometimes people say, well, what do you specialize in? And it's like, when you realize this understanding just helps everybody across the board, whether it's, as you say, whether it's couples in relationship or parenting or big business. I mean, you can't be alone in this world. It's like, either you're relating to somebody, even in your business, so relationships come into play, and ultimately how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, that change in perspective, it's kind of like the one single misunderstanding of how reality is created, the outside in versus the inside out. It's like that change in that shift in perspective for people, has a profound effect on everything, on relationships to start with, but relationships spread into business, into life, into parenting, into relationships with yourself, and it's like,
you said it much more eloquently than me. I'm blaming everything on the cold medicine today. My brain is a little foggy. Yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. Can you believe it? It's over already.
Really?
That was fast.
It only feels like about 5 minutes.
I know it does, doesn't it? Well, thank you. It was lovely seeing you again.
Thank you.
I will see you soon.
Thanks very much, Del. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.